Ma'am, excuse me, you're going the wrong way? Ma'am, please, no.
Hello, you gorgeous individuals, it's Kavir, and today I'm here with my cat, who's really angry at me and wants to be literally anywhere else right now. Hi, Artemis! Say hi! Anyway, recently a video idea struck me and I have been wanting to make it happen ever since then, but I had a ton of other videos that I had to get up within more time constraints, so I was working on those, but I now finally have the ability to do it and I'm so excited to do it because it combines my two favorite things, animals and books. Particularly my animals. So basically, since it is the start of a new month, I have to create a TBR for July. And I thought, what better helper could I ask for than my little kitten? So for this month, I am going to have my cat help choose my TBR. Now, obviously, my cat cannot just look through my bookshelf and literally pick out books for me to read. She's not that smart, though she likes to pretend she is. So what I have done is I have created 4 different selections for my cat to make between 2 books that have some kind of similarity in my mind, and I'm going to lay both of them on the bed and allow her to go towards one, and whichever one she goes toward is the one I'm going to be reading for the month of July. I don't know if that sounds complicated. Maybe you should just watch the video and you'll figure it out, and even if you don't, you'll get to see a cute cat. So you should watch this video anyway. I created 4 selections because in total that actually brings me to a TBR of 6 books, which I think is pretty good for the month of July considering the other stuff I have going on in my life. I think that that is the best for me to handle. Now you might be wondering how 4 selections can lead to 6 books. So the book The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo is 100% on my July TBR because it is one of the group books for the June and July Book of the Month choices for the BOOKBOUND Society, which is a book club that I host with 2 of my friends, Romy and May, and I have so much fun hosting that book club. The other choice that we had was Tell Me How You Really Feel by Amina May Safi, which I read in June and I absolutely loved with my whole entire heart. So I'm super excited to be reading this one in July, but I can't really prolong it since it is one of the books of the month. So this is on my TBR for sure. The rest of them, Artemis gets to choose. So without any further ado, let's get started! So Artemis's first choice gets to be between 2 sets of 2 books, actually. Basically, this is where there are 2 books that are part of a series, and I have read the first book, but I haven't read yet the second. So I'm going to be rereading the first one in July, and then moving on to the second book. The first of these choices is the first 2 books to The Bells by Danielle Clayton. So in this section, we have The Bells, and we have The Everlasting Rose. And I have already read The Bells, and I loved it with my whole entire heart. It is one of my favorite books of all time. I have raved about it many a time on my channel. So of course I want to read The Everlasting Rose, but I haven't gotten a chance to yet. Maybe I will this month. And Artemis's second choice is The Forest of a Thousand Lanterns duology by Julie C. Dow. So again, this is a situation where I have read A Forest of a Thousand Lanterns, but I have not yet read the sequel, Kingdom of the Blazing Phoenix. And again, A Forest of a Thousand Lanterns is a book that I read and absolutely loved. It is another one of my absolute favorite books. So of course I want to complete this duology, and I will get to read one of these 2 brilliant books this month. So let's find out which. So these are the 4 books laid out on my bed. There is Artemis trying to get away from all the chaos. So I'm just gonna carefully nudge her to the center of my bed and see which direction she heads. The Bells? So she has happily settled down here next to The Bells. I'm going to say that this is her first choice. In the month of July, I will be reading The Bells and The Everlasting Rose by Danielle Clayton. Next up, yet again, Artemis gets to choose between 2 fantasy books. First up is When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie McLemore, which is a book that I have needed to read for so long now. This is, I believe, Anna Marie's second book, and I am a huge fan of hers, but I haven't yet had a chance to read this book, so I have been absolutely dying to. And When the Moon Was Ours' opponent is We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faizal. So this is a book that has been hyped up for for so long this year. I don't know if you all have seen the hype for it, but I definitely have, and I have heard such brilliant things about it. It is also a fantasy, so I am just as excited to read this as I am to read When the Moon Was Ours. So I'm going to have Artemis choose between these two fantasy books to see which one makes it to my July TBR. Okay, while she is right in the middle of the two books, she literally tried to hug We Hunt the Flame, so I'm going to say that she's chosen this one. So next up, in Cov style appropriately, I have two very lesbian books for Artemis to choose from, which I think works out because I firmly believe my cat is also a lesbian. So Artemis's next two choices are between two sapphic contemporaries with beautiful covers that just happen to be in my favorite color pink. First up is Everything Leads to You by Nina LaCour, and secondly, Under the Lights by Dahlia Adler. Let's see which contemporary Artemis is in the mood for. Ready? Go! This time, it seems like she put a little bit more thought into her decision. She did head over to Under the Lights and give it a little sniff, but it seems like she has happily settled next to Everything Leads to You. That seems to be her choice for this round. So finally, before we get to Free My Little Girl, I have two books that I think are kind of different from what I normally read, even though they are still both contemporary books. And one of these books I think is actually considered literary fiction. I don't know what the other one is considered, but they are definitely both, I think, a little bit more serious. So first up is Under a Painted Sky by Stacey Lee, which I haven't heard much hype about, but I have had a few friends who have read this book and absolutely loved it with their whole entire heart, so I knew I had to get it and see if I myself could love it as well, so I've definitely been wanting to read this one for a while. And next up is Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng, and I have wanted to read her work for so long now. I have heard so much about her work. It has all been just brilliant things, so I've definitely wanted to pick up her work. And both of these books are also books that I typically would not gravitate towards, because even though they are on my shelf and I do definitely want to read them, if I'm just looking through my shelf for a read off the top of my head, these definitely aren't the ones I would pick. So today Artemis is going to help force me to read these books. Well, it seems like that's your final choice. The last book on my July TBR is going to be Under a Painted Sky by Stacey Lee. So with Artemis's help, I have managed to curate a TBR of 7 books that I am super excited to read for the month of July. So to go over again, because I don't really know how these clips turned out, I'm just gonna go through the 7 books one last time so that I have them in a more organized fashion. So first up is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo, which is one of the June and July books of the month for the Bookbound Society. Again, which is a book club that I co-host with my lovely friends Romy and May, who I will link in the description below because you guys should definitely be following them. This is a book that is actually told in verse, and it's not a writing style that I have really explored before, but this book has gotten so many rave reviews, and I actually saw one of Elizabeth Acevedo's spoken word poems and it was so brilliant, so I'm so excited to read this one. Next up is the first 2 books in the Belle series by Danielle Clayton, and I am so excited to give the Belles another read reread and dive into The Everlasting Rose because I am such a huge fan of Danielle Clayton's writing. She has such a brilliant writing style and reading her work is just so beautiful. She has this lyrical way with the words, and this book is a fantasy novel that really explores themes of beauty and womanhood, and those are just themes that I am so interested in, and Danielle Clayton explores them in such a beautiful manner, so I am so excited to give The Bells a reread and dive into the second one. And next up is We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faisal, which is a fantasy novel that is set in a fantasy world that is inspired by ancient Arabia, and it follows the point of view of two different characters. So there are two different main characters in this book, and again, I've heard brilliant things. It has been, honestly, in my eyes, one of the most hyped books of 2019, so I am super excited to read this one. Then there is Everything Leads to You by Nina LaCour, which is a contemporary that features a sapphic romance, and it deals with film and LA and mystery, and I am just so excited. I have read two of Nina LaCour's books before, and they are two of my favorite books of all time, so I'm super excited to read a third book by her. And lastly, Under a Painted Sky by Stacey Lee, which is a book about a Chinese main character who, along with a runaway slave, goes on the Oregon Trail, and that just sounds fascinating and important and moving, and I am super excited to read this book. So thank you so much to Artemis for helping me pick this TBR, even though she did it in anger and disgust. I love you still, and I'm very glad that you got to help me on my reading journey. Alright, so thank you all so much for watching this video. I really truly hope you enjoyed it, and I know Artemis does too, even though she looks like she would and she could kill me right at this moment. And if you did, please give it a like and subscribe because that stuff makes us happy. As usual, all of my social media and my Goodreads will be in the description down below if you'd like to follow me anywhere else. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're having a lovely day or night wherever you are. Please remember that you are beautiful and you deserve the world, and I will see you soon for a brand new video. Goodbye!